Hello everyone and welcome to a very special episode of The Kickabout with me, Chris, and tonight we have Dan with us.
Hello.
So as promised, we are going to dissect transfer deadline day and go through everything. We had planned to go through some of it on Monday, but since most Premier League teams have forgotten how to defend, we decided that there was just too much to squeeze in on Monday's show, so we decided just to do a show this evening and talk about everything transfer related. So what we're going to do, we're going to go through each team. We're going to give our feelings. Some teams we'll go into a bit more depth on, some we won't. There is obviously some narratives and some things to talk about with some teams, whereas others have just kind of had sort of average windows where they've done well but nothing too special. And then once we get to the end, we'll sort of like round up and maybe talk about who we think's had the best window and all that kind of stuff. So should be good. Right, so let's get straight into it. We'll start with Arsenal.
Yep.
On a personal note, I think they've had a really, really good window. I think under Arteta, they're beginning to build something. It looks like they've got a good foundation. In the window, they brought in obviously Willian, they brought in Gabri, they brought in Mari, they brought in Cedric Suarez, Danny Ceballos has stayed on loan for another year. And then they have obviously let a few go. I think Guendouzi and Martinez are probably the two most notable that I can think of and that I read about. But obviously the big signing was the one that did come in on deadline day. Thomas Partey, 45 million, with Lucas Torreira going the other way. What do you make of that one?
Yeah, I think that's a good deal. I mean, I think that's one that Arsenal were targeting the entire transfer window. Strange they left it till the last minute on deadline day, but they got their man, so I think he'll be a good player. I've seen him for Atletico Madrid, and he seems like a fairly decent player. African is going to be quite strong in that midfield. I think he'll do a better job than Torreira, to be honest. So I think they've come out on top of that one. Yeah,
Ghanaian international. He's got a huge work rate. He's got a very good range of passing from some of the YouTube clips that I've seen. In theory, he should be extremely highly disciplined, having played for probably the most disciplinary manager in the entire world, in Diego Simeone. Very good signing. Do you think he's the final, not necessarily the final piece in the puzzle for Arsenal, but you would argue they have shored up their defence. Gabri looks like he's come in and done a good job there.
Yeah.
So far this season anyway, that there's not been... Normally when Arsenal are shit at the back, it's usually front page news, and it hasn't been yet. No. So we have to suggest that means they have improved there. So then you would probably say, we know their front line is strong with Aubameyang, Lacazette, Pepe, etc. The central area of midfield was probably the last area that really needed strengthening. So is this guy that piece of that puzzle?
Yeah, I definitely think he's a piece of it. I think another few transfer windows until they're sort of fighting back. They might be fighting for the Champions League this year, but I think it'll be another couple of transfer windows yet until they're actually cementing a place in the Champions League. Because obviously defence has been their biggest issue over the last couple of seasons, and they seem to just keep buying attackers.
Yeah, and they've been ridiculed for that extensively. That everything it's staring them in the face what they need, and they continue to ignore it and just buy more players. But for once, whether this is Arteta's influence, whether does that mean therefore that the blame is very much levelled at Wenger and at Emery? For it was actually down to them. It was them that was buying these attacking players.
Yeah, I guess it depends on who gets the final say on transfers, because I think they've said that Arteta is a manager and not a coach, which in theory means that he gets...
That's changed recently, hasn't it?
So, I mean, it shows that they're obviously backing Arteta and they do believe in Arteta, because I think they've spent quite a lot of money in this window with those signings.
Yeah, I think they would have offset some of it with... I mean, Martinez went for about 20-odd million. Yeah. I'm not sure the actual amounts of money that Guendouzi and Torreira have gone for. I know Torreira's on loan. I'm not sure if Guendouzi's on loan as well. So depending on what the deal is with there, they might have had a loan fee come in. Depends how much of the wages the other teams are paying. So, but Arsenal, I mean, let's be honest, Arsenal are not short of money.
No.
I mean, Stan Kroenke, I think he's the majority shareholder from memory. I did read that his net worth has gone up quite considerably over the last 12 months, despite coronavirus. So, yeah, they're not short of money. You did when you turned up here this evening before we started recording. You did tell me a bit of an interesting story about Thomas Partey that I didn't know. Do you want to share that with the listeners?
Yeah. So Atletico were a bit annoyed with both Partey and Arsenal because while Arsenal were discussing the Torreira move to Atletico, they then completed that and then they went behind Atletico's back. Because with La Liga, you don't actually have to, as long as you meet the release clause, you don't actually have to tell the club. You just got to tell the league. I find that astonishing. Yeah, it's strange. You just got to tell the league that you're meeting the release clause. So they sent in the check to La Liga. La Liga cleared it. And then they were able to discuss terms with Partey. And then after it all be completed, Atletico were then told by La Liga that they no longer have Partey in their team. Bit of a strange one.
I find that amazing. They must be thinking, "Oh, we got a really good side here. We've got Torreira coming in, him and Partey in centre midfield," and then they get an email come through. Oh, by the way, he's gone.
Strange.
Partey's gone the other way.
I just find it weird that, being as they were already talking to Atletico about Torreira, they didn't just mention that they were going to be sniping one of their players.
It does seem a bit of a dick move, doesn't it? Like, as a gentleman's agreement, even if you don't have to tell the club, you would think that most clubs would do that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
because Atletico couldn't say no. If they were going to meet the release clause, they couldn't say no about it anyway, so they might as well just mention that they were going to.
So, yeah, very strange. But overall, yeah, I think Arsenal have had a very, very good window. Right, let's move on.
Move on to Aston Villa. So I think we're both in agreement that they've had quite a good window. They've brought in Ollie Watkins, Matty Cash, Bertrand Traore, Ross Barkley and Martinez. Quite a few players.
That's a big window for Villa, isn't it? I think they did spend quite a lot of money last season.
Yeah.
And obviously survived by the very skin of their teeth. They do need to improve defensively, which I think they, so far this season, a bit like Arsenal, they seem to have shored things up a little bit. It's the trouble is with doing this, and we mentioned this before, it's very difficult to not judge some of these transfers and these windows on their form right now, exactly. And very much the case with Villa. You know, how much do we read into that 7-2? Because I'm not sure who Villa have got next, but let's say it's Brighton. If Villa go there and get turned over by Brighton, it completely negates the Liverpool result. So we do have to be a little bit careful. But on the face of it, it's a great window for Villa.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because obviously, saying what you were just saying, like before the Liverpool game, Ollie Watkins hadn't scored any Premier League goals, and then he goes and gets a hat trick. So could have easily judged him either way. Yeah. Before that game, but yeah, I mean, on the base of those players and quite a lot of different positions in there. The goalkeeper was one they were suffering with. I think they sort of brought in 2 or 3 different goalkeepers, I think, last season.
Yeah, I can't remember. I think Pepe Reina was brought in, obviously, and played most of the season.
I think they started with Tom Heaton.
He got
injured.
Injured, didn't he? Yeah.
And then they brought in Pepe.
I mean, he did a job. He did okay for them. But I think that Martinez has proved...
Especially after the form he was in for Arsenal. I think Arsenal fans were quite shocked that Arsenal let him go, to be honest.
Yeah, I think the problem is with the situation that happened at Arsenal is that it became impossible to keep them both because Leno was always the number one. He obviously got injured. Martinez came in and played really, really well. Yeah. And he put himself into that number one frame to the point where Arteta had to make a choice. It was one or the other. And it was always going to be the case that whichever one he chose, the other one was highly unlikely to be happy with second fiddle. Yeah. Arsenal have actually signed another goalkeeper. I didn't write his name down, but I know they have effectively, I'm assuming, signed another backup goalkeeper. Yeah. But just touching on Ollie Watkins, I mean, I did mention on Monday's show that he hadn't scored for Villa, which wasn't completely true because he has scored in the, I think it was in the EFL Cup, but it was Premier League goals. Jack Grealish created 91 chances last year in the Premier League for his team, second only to Kevin De Bruyne, who created a ridiculous 136. So creating the chances clearly last season was not the problem for Villa, it was converting them. So have they now got a striker in Ollie Watkins that can convert more of those and push them further up the table?
Yeah, I mean, you've got Ollie Watkins, and not just him. You've got Bertrand Traore, who's starting to play now, and as well Ross Barkley. So I think it's not just that Ollie Watkins going in there. Obviously, he's a big key figure because he will be hopefully banging the goals in for them. But it's that whole like squad now that you think those like a jigsaw type thing. They're just sort of starting to put these pieces into place.
Yeah, and they can all sort of share the load a little bit.
Yeah, rather than one player doing it all for Villa.
Yeah, Wesley last year he showed some promise. He had all the attributes to be a good striker, but he just didn't seem to get the goals.
No.
So yeah, I think if, as we mentioned on Monday, I think if you're a Villa fan right now, I think you're extremely excited. I think Matty Cash is a great signing from Forest. He was a player, one of 4,000 that I think West Ham were interested in. But and he's going to be a good player for them. He's been long sought after in the Championship by multiple clubs, not just West Ham.
Yeah.
So that's a good window. So yeah, I think Villa are on the up. Right, let's move on. Let's talk about Brighton. Not really anything to particularly write home about, but I feel like they probably the fans will probably be thinking they should have done more.
Yeah, they started off very early by signing Lallana, but that was about as good as it got, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, they did sign Netherlands international Joel Veltman. I'll be honest, I googled that. Yeah. I don't really know a great deal about him, but those two are effectively the only ones that have come in of any real note. The other signings they brought in, they have actually brought in plenty of other signings, but they're, to me anyway, they seem to be quite unknown signings, so it's very difficult to judge the level of impact that they're going to have on the team, and there's probably other teams in the Premier League with the same thing, so it is kind of tricky to really work out whether they're a winner from this window or not. They have let quite a few players go as well. Glenn Murray, Shane Duffy, Anthony Knockaert, Martin Montoya. There's a lot of players that they've let go. So I don't know. Overall, I do feel like Brighton should have done more to shore up their team.
Yeah. I guess it depends on the financial side of things. You don't know how different teams have been hit, do you? It's all right for the bigger teams that they can cope quite easily. And I think the Aston Villas and stuff, they might still have money left over from their Championship promotion.
Mm-hmm.
So those teams that did finish the lower halves of the table, mid-table, you don't, unless they've got rich owners, you don't really know what their financial sort of status is.
No, that is true. So that does have to be taken into account, I suppose. I think in the manager, in Graham Potter, I think they've got a good manager who does like to play football the right way. I'm just not convinced that they've got the players to pull that off on a regular basis in the Premier League.
Although, I mean, the way they play against United, they could have quite easily won that game.
Yeah.
Different day, and they've probably won it by 3 or 4 goals the way they were hitting the post in that game. I think they've been unlucky in a couple of games. I think it's going to be one of those seasons, like, if you don't take your chances, I know it's like a Michael Owen quote, but
if you don't score, you don't win games.
I think it's going to be one of those seasons.
Yeah, I think we probably have to put Brighton fairly middle of the road. They've obviously done some business. We can't really judge some of those more unknown players for the time being. So that one, I think, could probably go either way.
Yeah. Move on to Burnley. Not a lot to talk about with them either, really.
No.
just the 2 signings, Dale Stevens from Brighton and Will Norris from Wolves.
Cool.
That's about it.
Right, moving on. I think they have let a few go.
Yeah.
Joe Hart, Lennon, and obviously Hendrick probably is the most notable because he's gone to Newcastle. Joe Hart went to Spurs, as we know. We probably think that's to do with the old
English quota.
Yeah. Especially as they did seem to have I don't know if he's still there. They did seem to have a pretty good number 2. In Gazanaga, is that his name?
Yeah.
He looked like a pretty good step in when Lloris did get injured last season. So, yeah, I think Burnley are probably one of the big losers in this window. But that being said, keeping James Tarkowski is a big win for them.
Yeah. Not sure if it's a big win for him.
Yeah. I think last season they finished 10th. I don't believe personally, based on the fact they've not really improved the squad. The way things are, we mentioned on Monday that Burnley might be one of a couple of teams that kind of need the Premier League to go back to normal because of the way they play and that building strong from the back. I'm just not sure their squad is capable of replicating last season's results in the current environment that the Premier League seems to be in.
Yeah. I was listening to something today that I found quite interesting. They were sort of saying that no player is sort of match fit. And the reason there are so many goals is because they're having the fitness, because when you're attacking, you find that sort of in you to, attack with the rest of your team.
Yeah.
Whereas to then find it in you to get back and defend, you just don't really... It's like a different tank that you're running off of to try and get back and defend. It's a lot easier to try and get up and score goals than it is to find the will to get back and defend.
That's very true. I don't really run very much on a Saturday, but you probably know that. When your eyes light up when you see a goal, you are probably filled with.
It's like an adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
But then you don't get the same adrenaline rush to get back and try and tackle someone.
So yeah, I think Burnley going to be an interesting one to watch. But I think if we're judging it based on this transfer window alone, I think you have to say that they've missed the bar for this one. Right, let's move on to Chelsea. I don't think we really need to talk about the actual signings because they did the majority of their business fairly early on.
Yeah.
It's well documented who they've bought. The only one that came in reasonably late was Mendy, the goalkeeper, who got his first start last weekend. We didn't talk about Chelsea on Monday's show, but it was a vastly improved performance from Chelsea and a clean sheet off the back from Mendy. So that's a good start to his career at Chelsea. I guess... when we look at the whole window from Chelsea, we know they've spent big. We know that there's a good chance that they're using some of the Hazard money. They've obviously bought a lot of attacking players. They have tried to buy some defensive players. Ben Chilwell had a good game at the weekend. I guess my question is not necessarily the calibre of the signings, because we know they're, in theory, on paper, very, very good. Is Lampard the man to get the most out of those players that have come in this window?
Well, he's still very inexperienced, isn't he? He's gone from a season at Derby, or 2 seasons at Derby. How long was it at Derby for? Was it 1 or 2?
I think it might have been 1.
Yeah.
It might have been 1 because he got him to the playoff final.
Yeah, I think it was just the one season at Derby and then straight to Chelsea. So he's still very inexperienced. I can't see him winning the Premier League no matter how many players he buys. Because as well as having the best players in the world, it's also about tactics, like mid-game tactics, how to close a game down.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. If Chelsea stick with him, then he'll learn in the job, obviously. But it might...
Will he be given the time if they start to slip?
Chelsea's not really a club that usually gives managers that much time.
It was well documented that most people assumed that he was being given plenty of slack all the while Chelsea couldn't assign players. Liverpool and Man City were obviously so far off into the distance in front of other teams. But now I think that it's not really an excuse, but that slack that was given, I think probably isn't there. Certainly not in the same level as it is. I think with the signings that Chelsea have made, if they're not at least the third best team in the league this year, I think they're probably going to have to class this season as a failure. Yeah. Especially with the amount of money they've spent. Yeah. There's a lot of money. But, I mean, going back to obviously the point of this show, if we're judging them based on transfers alone, you have to say they've had an extremely good window. Yeah,
100%. I'd be very happy if I was a Chelsea fan seeing all those players come in.
It's now just getting them to click and start firing. Right, cool.
Crystal Palace, are they the only two? Sort of Batshuayi, I don't even know how you pronounce his name. Is it Eze?
Ibrahim Eze. They have brought in Nathan Ferguson, who's a 20-year-old defender from West Brom.
They're the main two of note. Batshuayi. I think Batshuayi is a good signing. He was there before, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
A season or 2 ago.
Yeah. It was interesting, actually, when we were doing some of the research for this show, Batshuayi's not listed on Sky Sports as actually having gone to Palace, so I had to double-check that. But they needed to address their goal situation.
Yeah.
They did not score enough goals last year. I mean, if I quickly flick over to the goals they scored, I think they scored 31 goals last season. We have mentioned this stat before, actually. Second only to Norwich, who scored 26. Yeah. So obviously scoring goals was their big problem. Roy Hodgson's obviously identified that and brought in these 2 players. Started the season okay.
Yeah. Zaha's still there, which I think is great for Palace. I'm sure he probably would have wanted to move on, but
he's made no secret of that, has he?
No.
And Roy Hodgson has made no secret of hiding that fact either.
I think Hodgson's sort of said, if a club comes in with how much money we want, then we'll let him go. But no club yet has come in with the money they want.
I have to say, fair play to Zaha, because he supposedly has wanted that move for probably at least 2 seasons now. But it doesn't seem to have affected his professionalism, his work rate, his desire to play for Palace. And I think he's an example to some of these other players who try and force through these moves, that, you can still be a great player for your club. I'm sure the fans still love him and would continue to love him, even if he was to now go maybe in January or whenever the next transfer window is. But then you hear so many examples of players forcing through moves.
Yeah.
I mean, the obvious one that I can think of as a West Ham fan is Dimitri Payet. Yeah. He would have been, he only was with us a season and a bit. If he'd have left on better terms, he'd be a club legend still to this day. A bit like Carlos Tevez is. He only really played for us for 6 months.
Koscielny, was it last season? Yeah. Forced to move to Bordeaux.
So, I suppose maybe the players will turn around and say, yeah, but the problem is if you have that attitude, you don't get the move. So I suppose there's two sides to that coin. Yeah. But anyway, we digress. I'm not sure the signings they've made is enough. I think they could probably done with another midfielder or two.
Yeah. They've gone very attacking, haven't they, which they needed. But, I mean, even their defence, I think, is getting on a bit. I'm not sure about Sacco, to be honest.
No, not based on what I saw at the weekend anyway. I think time will tell for them. I think as an overall transfer window, I think you have to say that Palace have, at the very least, they've identified where their weaknesses were. They've addressed those by signing two fairly high-profile names. I mean, Ibrahim Eze scored a lot of goals for Palace in the Championship last season.
Yeah.
Batshuayi, I think, given a run of games, I think he will score goals, and he did at Palace last time out. So I think we have to give them a reasonably good rating in this window.
Yeah, I mean, they've signed for the positions they did need. So in that sort of sense, they've done well. It's just they probably could have done with a couple more. Because mainly.
Yeah, right. Let's move on then to Everton. I mean, a very, very good window. The reason for saying earlier about not judging a team based on their current form was probably more relevant in this case than in any other, because Alan, Decore, James Rodriguez have all come in and been absolutely brilliant for Everton.
Yeah.
So it'd be easy to turn around and say, oh yeah, Everton have had the best window, when in reality other teams have had great windows as well. But not solely based on the form side of it, just because they're a bit like Palace, really. They've seen a problem, they've addressed it, they've dealt with it. It's just that Everton's dealings have come to the front and come to the fore a bit earlier in the season than perhaps one or two of the others may or may not do.
Yeah.
But in terms of those players, I mean, even before the season started, I think when James Rodriguez came in for a fairly nominal fee, I think everyone was a bit, well, hang on a minute. Everton are doing the bits here.
Yeah. I think that James Rodriguez one could have gone two ways as well, because he's not done that great sort of since he went to Real Madrid and even at Bayern Munich.
He's had a lot of injury problems, which hasn't helped.
And I thought that one would go sort of one or two ways. He'll either hit the ground running or he'll just be just fill in the squad type thing.
Yeah.
And so far he's hit the ground running.
Yes, very, very much so. I think for one thing that if I was an Everton fan, I'd be very pleased about is previous managers. I don't know if I'm thinking back to, so the last manager was, what's his name? Marco Silva.
Yeah.
And the one before that, I think when they had
Koeman, was it before that?
They had who's obviously now at Barcelona. And even the one before that, Martinez, who's now at Belgium. I think he's still there. It always felt like Everton were just buying any creative player they could get their hands on. And what they ended up with was a squad overloaded with creative midfielders.
Yeah.
So for the first time in a little while, I look at those Everton signings and think, actually, for the first time, they've had a bit more of a think.
Yeah.
And they've had a plan, and they thought, right, we need legs in that midfield. We need work rate. We need desire, which they've got in Decore. We need somebody who's just a calm influence on the ball, almost like a bit of a Makalele figure, which they've now got with Alan.
Yeah.
And then we need another really creative player to get up and support Calvert-Lewin, especially if we're playing that kind of one up front thing. And James Rodriguez has done it. So I think Everton have probably, arguably, had the best window.
Yeah. I would say them and Chelsea are right up there with the best windows. And I mean, it's not just the signings that have come in, it's what they've done to the rest of the team.
Yeah.
Like Calvert-Lewin, I think without those signings, I don't think he'd be scoring as many goals as he is right now.
Yeah. And it wasn't so long ago that obviously, we've talked about this, how we weren't sure about Calvert-Lewin at the start of the season. He's obviously gone on to severely prove us wrong so far. Richarlison's just got himself injured. I haven't checked to see how serious it is, but if Richarlison had got injured last season or even the season before, it would have been awful for Everton because they didn't really have anybody else to sort of really replace the chances that he creates.
No, exactly.
Whereas now you'd argue that he's not even their most creative player now. So yeah, I think Everton fans will be very, very pleased.
Yeah, had a great window. So moving on to Fulham. They've made a lot of signings, I think, but the two that we noted were Areola from PSG, who was at Real Madrid last season.
Yeah, that's a good signing.
And Loftus-Cheek, last minute Loftus-Cheek.
Yeah, when we were talking on the WhatsApp group last night, I did mention that I felt like we would give Fulham a better grade on the assumption that Loftus-Cheek came in. That's obviously happened. They have actually signed a lot more players than I thought they had.
Yeah, I didn't realise how many they'd signed.
They have confirmed one or two of the signings they had on loan. Like Harrison Reed, for example, was one they had on loan while they're in the Championship, which they've now made permanent. So Ademola Lookman as well.
Yeah.
Wasn't so long ago at Everton that he was touted as having a bright future.
I'm just looking at that Lamina. He was at Juventus a couple of seasons ago.
Yeah. Anthony Knockaert, who's probably in the David Nugent zone, as we've talked about before. I wouldn't expect him to be flying in the Premier League, as he just seems to have that Championship is his level type thing. But I'm still on the fence as to whether these signings, even with Loftus-Cheek, I'm still on the fence as to whether their squad as a whole is good enough to keep them up. Yeah,
I mean, they've started off so badly, haven't they?
Yeah.
And I just don't see it getting much better, to be honest.
I mean, Loftus-Cheek coming in will be a lift to the squad. Yeah. He will provide. I mean, he doesn't have a great injury record, in fairness. So the key for him will be definitely keeping fit. But if he can provide that sort of engine in midfield, he might be able to drive them on to help, and also help shore things up at the back as well, with a bit of protection from the midfield. But yeah, I'm still not sold. I feel like they needed another player to share the load from a goal scoring point of view, because I feel like without Mitrovic, they don't really have anything.
No, they've got that Kamara, but he's been playing on the wing. I don't know a whole lot about Fulham, so I can't talk too much, but he doesn't strike me as a winger. He's quite a big guy. Yeah, he looks like he should be. He probably wants to be where Mitrovic is.
I think Fulham. I've given them a very middle of the road grade when we were doing this. A little bit like Brighton. You look on paper, they've signed a lot of players. Perhaps some of them really haven't had the opportunity to shine and bed into the squad yet. So I think you'd have to say, based on the transfer window alone, I think you have to give them a bit of a middle of the road grade. Moving on to Leeds, we'll probably have a quick break after this one. They've had a very good window. It's funny with Leeds because they have spent some fairly big money. Yeah. But you almost get this impression that no matter who they sign, because it's Bielsa and him and with his data and his spreadsheets and all his analysis, you get the feeling like you trust in Bielsa so much that he won't sign a bad player. Yeah, yeah. That you look at the signings, and even though I haven't heard of half of them, you probably think, he's fucking class. He must be.
Yeah. Rodrigo's playing for Spain as we talk right now. Yeah. A Spanish international playing for Leeds United, that's not bad going. Yeah.
So they signed Diego Llorente reasonably late in the window. They also signed Rafinha in the window. I think that was on transfer deadline day, that happened.
Signed Helder Costa on a permanent. I think that's a great signing.
Yeah, I really like the look of him. I know when we spoke to our friend Joe, who's a Leeds fan, he sort of said that Helder Costa wasn't really doing a great deal last season in the Championship. Yeah. But so far this season, he seems to be
scored a few goals.
Really good goals as well. Good goals. So, and I think Jack Harrison.
Yeah,
this sort of backhand agreement that Guardiola and Bielsa have, this sort of love story that's going on at the moment with those two.
He's been there for 3 seasons, I think.
I know.
Jack Harrison.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Might as well just sign him on a permanent.
Well, I mean, depending on how much they're paying for him, if you're Leeds, you probably think, well, we'll just fucking keep him. Just
true.
keep paying his wages, or half of his wages. And Robin Koch as well has been a good player. Is it Koch?
Yeah, I don't want to try and pronounce it.
So, yeah, I think overall Leeds have had a very good window.
Yeah.
There probably is a little bit of bias creeping into the back of our heads because they've started the season so well.
Yeah, it's hard to try and take that out of the equation, like how each team has started. But I think, it does go towards saying whether they have made good signings.
Yeah, and I suppose it should do as well, because ultimately we're trying to make guesses on some of these players as to how well they're going to perform later in the season. When actually we've already got some information in front of us now to make a little bit of that call. Right, okay, we are going to take a quick break, and then we will do the second half of the Premier League when we're back. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the show. Welcome back to the transfer special here with the Kickabout. Right, let's get back into this. Let's talk about Leicester City.
So I get the nice one to pronounce it Castagna.
Very good.
Yeah.
10 out of 10, sir.
That. And Wesley Fofana. And then they also signed...
You have a go at this one.
Cengiz Under, I think is how you pronounce it, from Roma on loan. Obviously, Castagna was to replace Ben Chilwell, and so far he's done a very good job of it.
Yeah, 21 million looks like a snip from Atlanta. Wesley Fofana, another one to turn down West Ham and go to Leicester. 30 million from Saint Etienne. That's another good signing, I think. For me, a little bit like Everton, bit of a plan. They don't need to go crazy. They've already got a very good squad.
Yeah.
The only thing you might, you correct me if is Cengiz Under. What position is he?
He's a winger.
Right, okay. So the only thing I would say is I was surprised they didn't sign another striker.
I was literally going to say the same thing. I'm surprised they haven't signed not a replacement for Vardy, but Vardy does, obviously he's getting on a bit now, and he does pick up injuries every now and again. And I don't
it's Ian Atchow,
I don't think Ian Atchow is a good sort of cover.
No, he promised so much at City, didn't he, when he was there? And he's just not done it since he's left. Not in regularity. He has scored goals for Leicester, but not in any sort of regularity that would make you think that he is a great player to come in. A little bit. I suppose when you compare him to someone like Jesus at City, you can come in for Aguero. That's a little bit of an unfair comparison because City is such a powerhouse that they've got the ability to have squads of that sort of depth. But I do think it is important to have a second striker who can come in and fill a role, pick up a couple of goals, link in with everybody, and I'm not sure Iheanacho does that regularly enough for Leicester when he's called upon.
No, it might be a bit unfair to sort of say. I think he's maybe, if he played regularly, he might become a good striker, but he's not a player. He's not an impact player.
No.
He's not one that can come off the bench. A bit like a Origi. Origi's quite a good impact player.
Yeah.
He can come off the bench and score important goals, whereas Iheanacho, I don't think he's a fill-in player. He'd probably be better playing first-team football for a lower team.
Yeah. But overall, I think Leicester have had a decent window. Not the best by any means.
No.
But I think they've done a good job of obviously replacing Ben Chilwell was never going to be easy.
No.
One thing you can really praise Leicester for here is if you look back over since they won the title, which was 4 or 5 years ago now.
Yeah.
So 2016 they did it? Or was it 2015, 2016? If you look at the players they've lost, they lost Danny Drinkwater's obviously he would not want to look back on his moves, particularly. He probably would have wished he'd stayed. They lost Mahrez, they lost Kante, they've lost Harry Maguire, they've now lost Chilwell.
Yeah. Where's Morgan? He's still there, I think.
Yeah, big Wes. He ain't going anywhere.
Maguire, did you say Maguire?
Yeah, Maguire. So if you look at how Leicester have still competed and rebuilt their squad with these new players that are coming in, I think Leicester, if we were doing a show about who's had the best last 5 years transfer-wise, I think Leicester have got to be right up there.
Yeah, they've done well to sort of lose all those players and still be fighting for Champions League football.
I think it's incredible. I think the job they've done with Brendan Rodgers, at the helm. Obviously, Ranieri had that amazing year, and then obviously didn't work out the following year. I think they've just been brilliant. I really do think they've been brilliant.
I think it helps that they've got owners that absolutely love the club.
Yeah, I think so interesting you say that. Actually, I think is that the difference between someone like a Leicester and someone like
Newcastle?
Newcastle. Yeah, great example. If you've got somebody who literally just lives and breathes the club, which clearly the Leicester owner did, and obviously it was a tragic accident that caused the owner's untimely demise. But yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe there is such a passion from those owners for the club, and they don't just see it as an investment and a bit of a business and a how do I put this? Almost like a vanity statement.
Yeah.
And is this the result? Is this a path for other success for other teams should follow, that other teams should follow?
I think so. I think it would be nice if owners, sort of, even if it's just partially supported the club rather than use clubs as like a cash grab to fund other things in their lives.
Yeah. Glazers.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to say it, but that was what was on my mind.
Yeah, but no, overall, I think they've done well. They have lost a few players as well, although the only one of any real note to pick up on is obviously the Ben Chilwell move. But overall, yeah, brilliant window for Leicester, I think. Right, let's move on. Is it me? Is it my turn? Okay. Yeah. Liverpool. Let's talk about them. So, a couple of notable exits to start with. Loris Karius has left the club. Didn't really. I was going to say, I don't think Liverpool fans will be shedding too many tears over that one. Although watching Adrian, they might think that he's in disguise. Yeah. Adam Lallana, obviously we've mentioned, has gone to Brighton. Dejan Lovren, the world's best centre back. Yeah. He's gone to Zenit St Petersburg, and obviously Ryan Brewster has gone to Sheffield United. Just want to talk about that particular one for a minute. There was lots of noise about what was going to happen with Brewster when he came back from loan off from Swansea, I think it was last season. There was lots of talk about what the future would hold for him. I think it was widely accepted that he was extremely unlikely to break into that Liverpool front three, barring any kind of mid to long term injury. Yeah. Are you surprised they've let him go on a permanent? Yeah, so that was a surprising one when I saw that Ryan Brewster was leaving. But the way they've done it, it's a bit less surprising. They've got the buyback clause in there that lasts 3 years. Yeah. So, if they are thinking of buying him back, it will be within those 3 years. And then they've also got a 15% sell-on clause if they don't buy him back. They've sort of covered themselves. Yeah, they've covered all areas, really. If he does become a quality player within the next sort of couple of seasons, then they could just buy him back for a little bit more than they sold him. Yeah. But for Sheffield United, they've obviously really struggled to hit the back of the net so far this season. Scored only their first goal at the weekend against Arsenal, even though it was a very good goal. They're not, the floodgates haven't opened defensively for them, but obviously you don't need to have them opening the floodgates defensively if you're not scoring any goals. No. So, yeah, it'd be very interesting to see if Brewster is the man to fire them back up the league. I'm sure Chris Wilder will be begging for that to happen. Yeah, I'm quite looking forward to seeing if Brewster starts scoring goals for Sheffield United as well. It's nice to see young players going into teams like that. I think it's good that rather than them just sitting on the benches and never getting played for these big teams, it's good to see them going to the lower league team. Yeah, and not lower league, but with Gareth Southgate, although he hasn't always done it, he does have a better record than previous England managers of picking English players who just aren't playing for the top four. Granted, he probably doesn't have a great deal of choice because there aren't that many English players. He wouldn't be able to build a team from just the top four anymore. But I wonder if that's playing in the back of some of these players' minds now that, it doesn't matter if I go to a Sheffield United or an Everton or, a Newcastle, wherever it may be. If I play well enough, I'm going to get noticed and I've got half a chance of getting in the England team. Well, I think it would be Ryan Giggs looking at Ryan Brewster. Is he Welsh? No. Oh, God. Shall I cut this bit out? Oh, fuck. Right, okay. I genuinely thought he was English. Okay, all right. Well, we can check it afterwards. I'm 90% sure he's Welsh. Okay. All right. I'm going to take your word for it. Right. In terms of the incomings, Thiago Alcantara is obviously the big one. You're going to search now, aren't you? Thiago Alcantara's the big one that's come in. Obviously, he's now picked up COVID, so he can't play for. He'll probably be back after the international break, I suspect.
Yeah.
He has shown a little glimpse of what he might be able to bring. He came on for that second half against Chelsea, I believe it was. Pushed up some ridiculous statistics.
What's wrong?
Is he English?
Yeah, he's English. I don't know why I thought he was Welsh. Maybe just because he was at Swansea, I just automatically assumed he was Welsh.
Yeah, it's a shame we're not doing the quiz.
Yeah, I know. Would have been 1 point here.
So yeah, he showed glimpses of what he can do. His passing statistics were very impressive. Diego Jota's also come in. A little bit of a surprise, that one. That one came out of nowhere a little bit.
And there was no sort of, well, as far as I know, there were no like links to him or anything like that. And then it was almost like the next day he was signed. So I assume they scouted him and I assume they were looking at him and just kept it quiet. But
yeah, it's an interesting one for me. I mean, Liverpool's the sort of team that probably these days you don't turn down, regardless of how much in first team football you think you're going to get. There's no two ways about it. Jota's not going to get the level of first team football at Liverpool that he would have got had he stayed at Wolves. But I think he offers something. From what I've seen from him so far, I took it. He got his first goal game before last, I believe. I can't remember who it was they were playing. But I thought he looked pretty good against Villa until obviously everything fell apart for Liverpool. So actually, I think that's a good move for him, actually. I think Liverpool are going to get something there.
Yeah, and I think this is the season for these sort of players because usually they wouldn't get much game time because the fixtures are so congested. I think a lot more squads are going to be used.
Yeah, that's true. A lot more rotation.
Yeah, so I think this is the season for some of the players that usually wouldn't get a look in to actually come through and shine and try and cement a first team place.
Yeah, and I suppose the other argument is also that the front three of Liverpool are obviously very prolific. They work really well, so chances are that's going to be their front three for some time yet. You would imagine, unless one of them gets sold. But it is important to keep a squad of hungry, good players in behind them. With the greatest respect to Origi, he was never going to be pushing any of those players really for a start on a regular basis. So maybe Jota is just the player that's been brought in just to sort of give those boys a nudge and just say, if you guys don't perform, I'm ready and waiting.
I think we've always said that's what Liverpool needed. They needed like a slightly stronger squad, not so much starting 11 because they've got a very good starting 11, but they needed those players on the bench to sort of make the starting 11, keep performing at the top of their game every week.
I think we have touched on this before, but with Thiago coming in, who would you have as your midfield three at Liverpool?
I mean, you've got to have Jordan Henderson in there.
Yeah.
And I would have Fabinho in with Thiago.
I would agree. That would be my three.
But I don't think that is what will happen. I think Fabinho will be the one that misses out.
It does seem that for the moment anyway, that Klopp seems to prefer Naby Keita.
Yeah.
Obviously, you've still got Wijnaldum, although there has been some links with Barcelona, but I'm pretty sure the Spanish, even though the Portuguese window is still open, it's also important to mention we did a little bit of a misstep on Mondays. We said that the English window is still open. It's important to say it's only open for Premier League teams signing players from the Championship rather than from other Premier League teams. So I'm pretty sure that the Wijnaldum Barcelona link is now irrelevant. So I'm pretty sure that the Spanish window has closed. I think Liverpool will be out. It's also worth mentioning they have brought in Costas Tsimikas. I think that's a good a pronunciation.
It's hard when it starts with a T and S, isn't it?
From Olympiacos for 11.75 million. That'll be another squad player, you would think. I think all in all, I think it was looking like at the start of the window that Liverpool, there was lots of rumblings about how Liverpool hadn't improved their team and how they needed to, and are they standing still? And I think now you would argue that they've done enough now that they can class themselves as having a very good window.
Yeah, I think Thiago is a great signing, and they've done very well to get him in, to be honest, especially as he was being linked, obviously, with United at one point. Although I think he always wanted to go to Liverpool. I think he was just waiting for them to make that offer.
Yeah. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, I know he only had a year left on his contract, but they've got him for only 25 million, which is pretty good deal by today's money, or very good deal by today's money. I think Liverpool have had a good window.
So moving on to Manchester City. So they've spent big on defenders this season, haven't they?
Yeah.
This window, sorry. They brought in Ferran Torres from Valencia. That was right at the start of the window, as well as Nathan Ake was right at the start of the window, I believe.
Position Ferran Torres?
He's a winger.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen much of him playing yet.
I think he's been coming off the bench. I think he's been starting in the cup games.
Right.
I don't think he's started any Premier League games yet. I don't know a whole lot about him, so I can't, and I haven't seen a lot from him yet. I haven't really watched any of the sort of like Manchester City Cup games.
No.
But I like Ake. I think Ake is a good signing.
Yeah. English talent is often inflated in terms of the price that they're paid, but I think 40 million for Nathan Ake, I think, is pretty reasonable. He's still pretty young.
Yeah.
And he does seem to have settled in, I well as well.
Yeah, and he can play left back as well as centre back, which is where I think he played at the weekend.
Yeah, he came on as a sub.
Yeah.
I think went there, didn't he?
And then obviously they've signed Ruben Diaz for a lot of money.
Yeah, we spoke about him on Monday. He looks to have settled in again very well as well. Very early days, of course, but the early signs are good. But I think Man City are another team who have clearly identified where they were weakest, and they've done this over the last few years. Actually, in fairness to them, yes, they have spent an awful lot of money on defenders, but I guess you could also argue that when you're a team that has the ability to do that, can you really blame them for trying to go out and buying these big name defenders when they're the club the size they are? They've got the money available to them. They go out and spend this big money. If it doesn't work, it's always going to be big news, just purely because of that price tag. So the next player, they're not going to spend. Let's say, for example, Ruben Diaz doesn't work out. If they were then to go and spend 70 million on another defender, the world's going to go, oh, here we go again. They're just signing another big defender. But what would they say if they just went and signed a £5 million defender?
Yeah, and the problem is teams like Manchester City, as soon as a club hears that Manchester City are interested in their player,
they had another zero to the price. They
automatically add on like 20, 30 million to what they would have asked any other club anyway. So, I mean, any other club, maybe not like your top six, but maybe if Spurs had gone in for Ruben Diaz, they probably could have got him for about 40 million.
Yeah.
But because it's Manchester City and they know that
they got money to burn.
They've got a lot of money. It goes up to 65 million.
Yeah. Yeah, a couple of notable people who've left. Otamendi has obviously gone to Benfica as part of that Ruben Diaz deal. Jack Harrison, who's spent so much time on loan in Leeds, he probably lives up there permanently now. David Silva obviously been let go after an incredible career with Man City.
Very close to joining Lazio, and then last minute went to Real Sociedad.
So and also Claudio Bravo is another one that's gone. There was a few others on that list that we haven't mentioned, but obviously the big one, Leroy Sané.
Yeah,
55 million or thereabouts. To Bayern Munich. That one was long in the making.
I was going to say that one was coming, wasn't it? He sort of, you could see he wasn't really that interested at City anymore, especially after Bayern started coming sniffing round. So I think that one was just a matter of time, really. Yeah,
I mean, it's a shame that he's gone from the Premier League because he's a fantastic player. He obviously had a very he had a real purple patch, didn't he?
Yeah.
Where he was almost unstoppable.
Yeah.
Then he obviously had I think it was a quite serious knee injury, of which I don't think we've actually seen him play since he had that injury.
No. Well, I mean, when they had Sterling, Sané, and Aguero, no defender wanted to come up against those three.
No. And often watching people play, you would argue that nobody did because they cut through them so well. So, but yeah, just I'd like to. I think we should all just take a minute and just pray for the other German teams now that Bayern Munich, who were already scoring goals for fun, have now just added Leroy Sané to their ranks.
Yes, well, they got Serge Gnabry, Kingsley Coman, Leroy Sané, Lewandowski,
Müller.
Yes, good, yeah.
It's quite something. Right, let's move on.
Probably skip this one.
So we're going to caveat this one before we talk about Man United. Me and Dan wanted to caveat this one, and also when we talk about West Ham, we're fully aware that we have spent a fairly sensible amount of time talking about Man United and West Ham on this podcast so far. We absolutely do not want this to turn into the Man United and West Ham podcast. But the problem is that they're just the gift that keeps on giving at the moment. There is just so much news around the two clubs. It's almost impossible not to talk about them.
Yeah.
And with Man United, it's not like we're the only podcast or the only talk show that's talking about Man United and their failings both on and off the pitch, and it's same with West Ham. Here's the weird thing, right? So when I was doing the grades, I actually gave Man United a D grade. When I haven't really talked about the other gradings I've given the other teams, but when I was doing this, I gave Man United a D. Now, in hindsight, if they had done all of this business at the start of the window, you would probably grade them a lot higher. But the problem is that everything just felt so rushed, and everything just felt like there was no real plan there. Cavani has been a free agent for what, 2 months, whatever it is.
Oh yes, I mean since the end of last season, he didn't play any of the return games for PSG, did he?
Yeah, and I thought he'd gone to Benfica. I mean, we mentioned this on Monday. I thought he'd gone to Benfica. Yeah. All of a sudden, it comes out of nowhere that Man United, are interested, and then before we know it, the deal's done. I mean, what do you make of the Cavani deal? I mean, there's been a lot of opinion about this. What do you make of it as United?
I think it's a panic buy. You can't tell me they've been looking at him the entire time. Otherwise, why would they have waited until the very last minute to sign him? Mm-hmm. Does
it strike to you that it was literally? Do you think they ever really considered him, or do you think it was literally just a case of shit? We can't get our main man Sancho because we've just been morons throughout the entire transfer window and dragged our heels, not met the asking price. We need to sign someone who's available, and then they just picked him.
Yeah, I don't know how you can go from Jadon Sancho to Cavani because they're completely different players.
Yeah,
one, they play in a different position. Two, one is a bit of a like a powerhouse striker. The other one is a sort of small, agile winger.
I mean, they're at complete opposite ends of their careers as well.
Yeah, exactly. For me, I'm not happy with United's transfer window, mainly because I just don't see the vision. Like, they made a big thing out of signing young, hungry players. I think I said this before, but out of signing young, hungry players, which would have been like Jadon Sancho, because as far as I'm aware, he wanted to go to Man United.
Yeah.
And then I'm happy with the Telles buy. I think that's a good sign-in. Donny van der Beek, I think, is a good sign. I don't think we needed a central midfielder.
Yeah.
I think we needed a centre-back and a winger more than anything, and we didn't get either of them.
We just spare a moment for poor old Luke Shaw, who came out and publicly said Man United need better players in the squad, and then one of the first players to sign is another left back.
Yeah. But that Diallo, 37 million, and he's played 3 games for Atalanta.
That one very much confused me, and the chances are he's not going to be able to play until at least January, from what I understand, because of work permit issues.
Yeah. I mean, they've scouted him since he was 15. But why leave it till transfer deadline day to suddenly sign him?
Exactly.
And then there's the Palestri from Uruguay. That one was apparently recommended by Diego Forlan. United say he'll be going straight into the first team, but then Diego Forlan saying he's nowhere near ready for the first team. So to me, I think you could be, some people would say, oh, we've had a great window, we've signed all these players, but to me, it's just a very massive panic buy, and it shows no vision or philosophy whatsoever.
Yeah. There's a lot of how do I put this? There's a lot of concern around United right now, and the direction in which the club is heading. If you just going back to the Cavani transfer for a second, if you take out the fact that it's quite clearly a panic buy, and that there's not really been a real plan involved, how do you think he's actually going to get on in the United team? Do you think he will be a success on his own merit, regardless of the future thinking and the fact that he probably is a short-term solution to a long-term problem?
Although I'm disappointed, it could be an absolute. Zlatan came in and he had a great season. He only had one season really because of that injury.
Yeah.
But that one season he was quality.
Yeah.
He scored quite a lot of goals. So if Cavani comes in and does that, I think a lot of fans all will be forgiven, and it will work out, and the Glazers and Woodward, they'll be singing and dancing.
Again,
yeah, exactly. So it could go either way, and everyone knows how good Cavani is. But if you look at his record for PSG over the last couple of seasons,
I think
last season he scored 7 goals.
Yeah, it's
in like
not as prolific as it used to be.
No. So yeah, with that one, it will go either way. Yeah, that's all I can say. It will go either way. I hope he bangs in goals every week. But he's 33, nearly 34.
Yeah,
and he's never played in the Premier League before. And he's not Zlatan. Zlatan was in a completely different league.
Yeah, so just before we move on, just worth noting that there have been a couple of notable people who've gone through the exit door. So Chris Smalling has made his move to Roma permanent after quite a long time. Actually, I'm quite surprised it took as long as it did for that deal to come to a conclusion. And I'm also quite surprised that, bearing in mind how well that he did at Roma last year, I'm quite surprised that nobody else seemed to come in for him, Premier League or otherwise. Only 18 million he went for in the end.
Yeah.
I'm surprised no one else maybe took a gamble. I'm surprised he would be perfect for someone like a Fulham.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, if you're Chris Smalling, you're going to choose Roma over Fulham, you would think. But I'm surprised to know that somebody else hasn't come in for him.
Yeah, I was quite surprised. I'm surprised it took till deadline day for him to move because he's been training on his own the entire time.
Yeah.
So he was pretty isolated from the rest of the team. But I think he's a good, probably one of our best centre backs, to be honest.
Well, given the state of the current centre back situation, it speaks volumes to what Solskjaer thought of him that he never even considered bringing him in.
But
he may not have been signed he may not have been a registered player. If your squad was big enough, he may not have even been registered. So. And then also, so Angel Gomez, one of the players that broke on the scene last season, was supposedly going to be a bright player for the future. He's left on a free transfer to Lille.
Youngest ever United player to start a Premier League game.
Yeah, so that worked out well. Alexis Sanchez has obviously made his move to Inter Milan permanent on a free. If nothing else, that frees up a huge amount of wages for United.
It's gone to Cavani now.
It's now with Cavani, yeah. And then one of the other bigger ones was Diego Dalot. Dalot.
I'll let you decide.
Yeah, okay. We'll call him Diogo.
Yeah.
And he's gone to AC Milan on loan. So, right, that wraps up United.
Yeah, so next Newcastle, I think they've had a really good transfer window. For a club that, the owner's been trying to sell for about 6 years, I think they've done really well in this transfer window. They've got Jeff Hendrick from Burnley on a free.
Which is already paying out.
Yeah. Ryan Fraser from Bournemouth on a free. He hasn't started that many games yet, but I think he'll be a great player for them.
Yeah, he obviously has come to the club in a little bit of a cloud of controversy. So for those that don't know, he was obviously contracted to Bournemouth last season. Almost all players that had their contracts running out towards the end of last season would have had to have signed short-term extensions. Because most contracts will always expire sometime around June or July when the season has obviously finished. Because of what happened with coronavirus, the season got extended. Ryan Fraser refused to sign an extension to the contract because he wanted to leave. So he was only ever going to sign a short-term extension. He was always going to leave the club. But the fact that he put his own personal career in front of the needs of the team, and boy did they need him, and obviously Bournemouth ended up getting relegated. He very much left under a cloud. I mean, what do you make of that? I mean, it's probably one of those ones you can sort of see the argument from both sides.
Yeah, I'm sort of sat on the fence of it. I can see, he didn't want to get injured when he's sort of sat in the shop window looking for another club.
But is that not a risk every player takes by walking out onto the football field?
Yeah, and obviously then you can see it from the fans and the club point of view. Like, they've invested so much in this player, and they're in a relegation, which they obviously then got relegated for that player.
I mean, he could have been the difference, because if you look at how close it was, final day of the season, they actually won their final game. Actually, it was in the end, it was technically Villa that kept themselves up rather than Bournemouth relegating themselves. Ryan Fraser, he had it in him to be the difference between staying up and going down.
I think if it was me in that position, I would have extended for the extra bit and tried to help the club stay up.
I mean, if you look at some of the other players he played for Bournemouth, Nathan Ake, Callum Wilson, they both got big money moves. Obviously, Wilson is also at Newcastle.
Yeah, we haven't mentioned him yet, but obviously Callum Wilson, I think he's been their best signing, Callum Wilson.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. I think Jamal Lewis is actually a very good signing for Norwich. But yeah, Callum Wilson, we've said this on the show, he just gives them something they haven't had. That runner in behind them. Joe Linton obviously has always worked very hard for the team, but he just has not provided anywhere near the goals they need from that position.
4 goals in 4 games, not a bad start.
Yeah, I think he scored at least 1, maybe 2 penalties. But he's a poacher, as well as being able to run in behind and score those more easy on the eye goals, I suppose. But I think Newcastle can be very, very pleased with their window.
Next, Alan Shearer.
That's a big shout. That's a very big shout. Callum Wilson was dancing around the England team. He had played a couple of games. I don't know if he actually started any, but I know he definitely came on as a sub. He has not been... He doesn't seem to be in the picture at the moment for getting a call-up. Obviously, he's being overshadowed by the performances of Calvert-Lewin, who we've mentioned before. Do you think that he can work his way back into Southgate's plans?
Yeah, I mean, that's unfortunate because, 4 goals in 4 games is very good.
It's a very good return,
But unfortunately, you've got Danny Ings who's scoring goals for Southampton. You've got Calvert-Lewin as top goal scorer in the Premier League at the moment.
Yeah.
Then you've got your Harry Kane, Marcus Rashford, Raheem Sterling.
Sancho.
Yeah, Jack Grealish. There's a lot of attacking players.
Do England just play like one defender and just play everybody else? Just go for the 9-7 results.
Yeah, there's a lot of attacking players to choose from, which is great. Unfortunately, it's the other end of the pitch. Mainly centre-back, where I think England are struggling to find.
You do sometimes get the feeling like you think that we would be more solid by not playing defenders at times. But anyway, the proof will be in the pudding, obviously. We also did mention, I think incorrectly on the show on Monday, that the way in which the Nations League fixtures worked, that they were reversed and we would be playing Belgium twice. Most of you will know that that's not the case. So we've got Wales tomorrow, Belgium on Sunday, and then Denmark on Tuesday, Wednesday?
I think it's Wednesday.
Wednesday, yeah. So, apologies for that. We will, of course, be reviewing 2 of those England games next Monday. And then we'll review the final game the following week, as well as talking about the Premier League. So that will be a busy show. In terms of Newcastle's outgoings, Yoshinori Muto,
striker, wasn't he?
He was a striker. Yeah, I actually quite liked him. I thought he worked really hard. I think he probably scored more goals than Joelinton did.
Yeah, probably did. Yeah.
But obviously, with Callum Wilson coming in, I think that's
that to ship one of them out. And, I mean, Joelinton was 40 million.
Yeah.
So it wasn't going to be him.
He's not quite there. Yeah, I think if he has another really bad disappointing season, I think his time will be up. We'll have to wait and see. Worth noting, this Portugal-Spain game that I've got on the TV here. How this game is 0-0, I've got absolutely no clue. I think I've seen at least Portugal hit the bar twice, and Adama Traore's just gone close. Interesting that he has just he's obviously put his allegiance to Spain.
Spain over Mali.
So
Mali, I don't know how you pronounce that.
I think it is Mali. Yeah. There's a lot. We need to work on our pronunciations. There's a lot of that. Right, so Sheffield United, getting towards the end now. Sheffield United, Rhian Brewster we've already talked about. We think that's a good signing.
Yeah.
Aaron Ramsdale came in early on in the window. Another good signing, we think. Ethan Ampadu on loan from Chelsea, decent young player. What do we think of Sheffield United at the moment? Obviously, they've not had a good start to the season, but it doesn't feel like they're a million miles away from getting a couple of results and kicking on again. It's not like they're doing a West Brom or a Fulham and getting smashed every week.
No, unfortunately, like we were saying, Sheffield are a very defensive team, and at the moment, it's a season for attackers.
Yeah.
So I'm sure as the season gets a little bit further in, things will start to go back to normal, and Sheffield will probably be. I think they'll be all right with their defending and stuff. And they've brought in Rhian Brewster, who I imagine will start scoring goals when he gets into the team. Yeah,
you would imagine he will be pretty much front and centre for Sheffield United. They have got, obviously, McGoldrick. They've got McBurney, that's the one. Who I rate both those players. I think especially McBurney, 1 or 2 of the heady goals he scored last year, I thought were absolutely class. But neither of them are prolific. Neither of them are. I mean, when you're Sheffield United, they're not looking for a 20 or 25 goal a season striker, because I think they're so rare that only really the big clubs have those sorts of strikers. But what you do need is probably a 10 or a 15 goal striker.
Yeah, I think Sheffield, their sort of game is to try and keep a clean sheet and try and grab those 1-0 wins. 1-0, 2-0. They're not looking to score 5 goals a game like your Man Cities and your Liverpools.
Yeah.
Their sort of job is to shut up shop and just try and grab that goal to either get the draw or the win.
I think with Sheffield United, I think they do play more football than I think some people think they do. It can be easy at times to sort of throw that accusation at them that they just, as you say, shut up shop, sit behind the ball and just try and catch them on the break, sort of a la Mourinho.
Yeah.
I have seen them play some games with. I mean, if you look at the who was it they played last year? It might have been United actually.
Probably.
I know it's a very typical thing, but when they played against United, they absolutely battered them.
Oh yeah, they went 3-1 up.
3-1 up, and then I think they ended up 3-3, didn't they? They threw it away.
Was it 2-0 up and then 3-2 United, and then I think Sheffield United got a late equaliser, I think.
Oh, that's right. Yes. Yeah. But yeah, the football they played in that was really, really good. So they have got it in them.
Yeah. I'm not. When I say they're a shut-up shot, I don't mean that in a bad way, because it's like I think they are similar to a Mourinho team. They work from the back, and I don't think if every team went out and attacked, it would be very entertaining. But it just wouldn't work. There would be no point in having any defences because you would just go all out and play 11 up front.
Yeah, but no, I think Sheffield United will be reasonably happy for the moment. As I say, don't think their season, even though they've not got any points on the board yet, I've not seen a side that's sort of, staring relegation in the face already, with Fulham and West Brom looking very much like that. Yeah,
I don't think Sheffield United, I'd be surprised if Sheffield United were to get relegated. I think they've got a lot more about them, especially Chris Wilder. I think Chris Wilder's a very good manager, and I love that he just says it how it is.
Yeah, me too. I love that about him.
He reminds me a bit of Ian Holloway, to be honest. Should we move on to the next one?
Yeah, let's do it.
So Southampton, I think the main one was Kyle Walker-Peters coming in.
That's a good signing.
Yeah, I think that's a good signing. Young right back, because Nathaniel Klein, I think he was there, has just left on a free.
Did they ever buy him from Liverpool, or was he only ever on loan?
I don't know. I can't remember if he was there or if he was at Bournemouth. He might have been at Bournemouth, actually.
Keep talking, I'll do a Google.
But yeah, obviously Kyle Walker-Peters there on loan from Tottenham last season, so they've signed him on a permanent for 12 million. Which I think is quite good he's a young player. 12 million is not half bad going. And then right at the end of the window, they brought in Theo Walcott.
Yeah, not lovely emotional return to Southampton.
So I think he'll be good for a bit of experience in there. He knows the club very, very well. I think Theo Walcott will be a very good player for them.
Do you think? Sometimes with these return to their hometown clubs or their clubs they were at when they were younger, they are more emotionally driven than actually properly thought out transfers. Do you think that that's the case with someone? I mean, Wayne Rooney obviously had his moments for Everton, but I would say overall when he went back to Everton, it wasn't really a big success.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're yet to see how the Gareth Bale thing plays out with Spurs. There have been other examples down the years. So do we think that Theo Walcott this is going to be a success, or do we think that...
Problem is, I think Theo Walcott's a winger, and I think being a winger is one of the hardest positions when you get into your 30s, because in my opinion, wingers need plenty of pace, and as soon as you get into your 30s, you lose that pace. It's a bit like Juan Mata. Like, I love Mata, and he keeps being played on the wing, and he's just not a winger anymore, in my opinion, because he just doesn't have that pace. And he's a great player, and I think if he was played in the right position for the right team, he could still offer plenty. But anyway, I digress. I'm talking about United again. But yeah, I mean, Walcott's getting on a bit. He faded away a bit at Everton, so it could go either way. I think with that one. Have you still not found out?
No, I'm looking. So he wasn't at Southampton.
Oh, okay.
He was at Southampton and then he went to Liverpool.
Okay.
And
wow, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, so he was. According to this, he has been on loan at Bournemouth. But
That's what I thought.
He's suffered a fairly serious knee injury not too long ago.
Right.
Nothing but professionalism in this part. Googling things halfway through the podcast. But yeah, it's he's one of those players where sometimes I actually think, do you know what? Where is he? Where's he gone? Yeah. But like the latest entry on here is that he was released at Liverpool. He made no appearances during last season, mainly due to injury problems. Liverpool confirmed they wouldn't renew his contract and he would leave the club. He has trained with Crystal Palace, I think, in the summer in sort of a regain fitness attempt. And he was registered. I think he was registered as a trialist. It says here in order to make appearances to the under-23 team. And then, interestingly, after that, he has an entry at Bournemouth on loan, but that seems to have been during his time when he was on loan when he was at Liverpool. So I think that's in the wrong order. So yeah, maybe our viewers can tell us that one. Where the fuck is Nathaniel Clyne? Anyone seen him?
I don't think he's got a club at the moment. I think he's a free agent. I saw a list of free agents the other day.
Okay, that would make sense.
So I think he's a free agent. But yeah, there are two other signings that I don't really know a whole lot about, to be honest. And I really don't want to pronounce the first one. Mohamed Salisu.
Yeah, I think that's close enough.
And Ibrahima Diallo. Don't really know a whole lot about those two, so I can't really go into detail about them. I've not seen them at their former clubs.
No.
So I guess time will tell with those two.
Yeah, I think one thing to mention with Southampton is it's huge that they held on to Danny Ings. It didn't really ever sound like there was any really serious interest. Tottenham were mentioned as a potential suitor, but I don't think that was ever really a concrete interest. But yeah, keeping him for Southampton is huge. The goals he's scoring doesn't seem to have slowed down since we had the end of the season into this new season. So yeah, I think Southampton will be reasonably pleased with their business. Not anything crazy, but not anything bad otherwise. Let's move on to Tottenham then, as we get to the last couple. Obviously, they did a reasonable amount of their business fairly early on. They did bring in Carlos Vinicius from Benfica on loan fairly late in the day. I don't know if that was a deadline day signing or whether it was a couple of days before.
I think, yeah.
Obviously, the big one is Gareth Bale. We don't know yet how that's going to play out. We suspect he'll be more involved with the matchday squads after the international break. Yeah. Maybe we'll get a glimpse of him matching tomorrow night against England. And we'll get an idea of where his sort of match sharpness and match fitness is at. But overall, Tottenham, I think, have had a very good window. Yeah,
I mean, could you imagine Son, Kane and Gareth Bale?
Fully fit Gareth Bale, yeah.
It's a bit of a Mane, Firmino and Salah, isn't it, really?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, they've also signed Reguilon, Doherty, Joe Hart and Højbjerg. We talked about Højbjerg in particular on Monday, how good he was against United. Harry Redknapp on Sky Sports said that he thinks Spurs can win the league.
I think that's going a bit far.
Should we stay off the happy pills, Harry?
Yeah, I don't think, not quite yet. But you look at their squad, I think they've got a very good squad and they've made the right additions. You've got a left back there, a right back, brought in centre midfielder, a winger, a striker. They've filled in a lot of positions.
Yeah. And for, if you look at actually what they've done, Joe Hart was a free. Matt Doherty and Højbjerg were undisclosed fees, but you wouldn't imagine they'd be huge, especially Højbjerg's, because I think he was coming to the end of his contract. Reguilon was 32 million. We think that I heard a quote on another podcast I listened to where someone said, how do you make that Gareth Bale deal work if you're Spurs? And the answer was, well, make Real Madrid pay for most of it. So Real Madrid will still be paying at least half of that loan fee of his wages, you would think. So actually, they've not spent huge amounts of money and actually bought really, really well. They have obviously balanced the books a little bit. So Ryan Sessegnon's gone out on loan to Hoffenheim. That's a bit of a shame. Ryan Sessegnon's not done it since he's gone to Spurs, has he?
He's not really had the chance, has he? He's not really ever been in the squad.
No, it's a shame because he really did look like that player at Fulham, one of the next big England future players, and it just seemed like maybe he made that move to Spurs too early.
Yeah, but Germany seems to be working out for a few English players.
This is true. Yeah, it does seem like a bit of a breeding ground and a bit of a training ground for English players. Jan Vertonghen obviously gone to Benfica on a free. Victor Wanyama actually was one I hadn't heard.
I didn't. Montreal Impact.
He's gone to Montreal Impact, on a free transfer. So yeah, I think overall Spurs can be very, very pleased with their transfer window. They've obviously started the season reasonably well as well. For them, they're probably one of those clubs, as we spoke about on Monday, that probably didn't want the international break after that result against United, and the fact they've been scoring a lot of goals recently, especially away from home. They would have probably preferred the international break to have not happened. There is still that feeling, though, that if Harry Kane gets injured, can they cope without him? which I've always thought might be a little bit insulting to Heung-min Son because he's such a good player. But I guess if they've got Son and Gareth Bale fully fit, all of a sudden losing Harry Kane doesn't look as bad anymore.
No, because you can put Son up front and then put Lucas Moura on the wing along with Gareth Bale.
So their depth is beginning to look pretty good at Spurs.
Yeah, plus they've brought in this striker from Benfica as well now. So I think he is supposed to be the replacement if Harry Kane does get injured.
Yeah.
Looking up for them.
Yeah, absolutely. So penultimate team then?
So moving on to West Brom. They've brought in someone that a lot of people remember, Ivanovic.
I mean, did they have to buy his Zimmer frame at the same time?
Strange. He's 36.
Is he as old as it is? I thought he was older than that. Okay.
But for a right back...
I apologise, Branislav.
For a right back, 36. I mean, he's good for experience, but...
It's a Zabaleta to West Ham move, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean... Dean Garner's probably the big one.
Say, one that sits well with you is Dean Garner.
I'm sort of over it, and I'm sort of not. I think more... From West Brom's point of view, they needed more than just Dean Garner. And I think that has been shown to be reasonably apparent in the start of the season so far. I mean, to the best of my knowledge, I could be wrong. To the best of my knowledge, I don't think they brought in anyone on deadline day. They got Conor Gallagher from Chelsea, who's a pretty decent young player.
Yeah.
But these are not players that you're bringing in to stay in the Premier League, are they?
No, it's a strange signing bringing in Conor Gallagher. I mean, it's good for him. He's going to be playing a bit more football. But like you say, I can't see that sort of player, especially with the way they've started the season. They probably need the experience of like your Ivanovic and stuff like that. Rather than your Conor Gallagher's to be keeping them up.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see anything in any of these signings, and certainly not seeing anything at the start of the season that suggests that West Brom have got a squad that's capable of staying up. I did say this at the start of the season as well, as I wasn't sure whether Bilic had the tactical nous to sort of do what other clubs have done that have come up, where, understanding and realising that you don't have the squad to play in the same manner that you did in the Championship. And win games. And I don't think Bilic has the ability to turn West Brom into playing in a different way.
I think Norwich made that mistake last season. They were adamant they were going to play exactly the way they did in the Championship. In the Premier League as they did in the Championship. And to start with, it was really interesting. They came toe-to-toe with the likes of Liverpool and Man City.
Yeah.
And everyone sort of thought, this could be quite interesting, but in the end they sort of started to fade away. And
the trouble is that happens so much in the Championship because often, especially when a team wins the Championship, I mean, maybe not so much the case with Leeds, because I think you have to take them differently because of their manager and the players they have. The way they started the season obviously does come into that a bit, but so many times with Championship teams that come up, they're riding the wave of confidence from the previous year. If they've had an incredible season, they've gone up automatically. They've only probably lost a handful of games. They're still riding high, and they take that confidence into the Premier League, which, as you say, serves you well in the early part of the game. And then, you look at Norwich as the example. They played against City, wasn't it, and beat them 3-2 in the end. And everyone was like, oh my God, Norwich are going to be amazing. What a performance this is. They could really look like they're going to stay up, have a great season. And then I don't know how many games they won after that, but it weren't many. And I don't think we ever saw him again, did we, for the rest of the season?
No.
So they won't be the only club. The problem is that both West Brom and Fulham, they've not had that initial run of games at the start of the season where they've played well. They've lost every game so far. Conceded heavily,
a lot of goals,
and the dent in your confidence that will have is huge. So, if either of them stand a chance of staying up, they've got to pick up points quickly.
Yeah, Dean Garner might start to regret going to West Brom. You never know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily think he'll regret going there if they suddenly get relegated, because he played in the Championship in the last season. His deal, I mean, I'll come on to that in a minute when I talk about West Ham, but his thing was that he didn't think he was going to get first team football at West Ham. And he obviously felt like at the stage of his career he needed to be playing regularly, and you can't take that away from him. So
I think that's good. Players that want to be playing rather than just sitting and earning a wage packet sat on the bench for bigger club.
Yeah, and for someone like him, he was a West Ham boy through and through, so that wouldn't have been an easy decision for him to make. So on that note, on that topic, let's move on then to the final two clubs. So we've got West Ham and Wolves to go. West Ham have had a very, very poor transfer window. I don't want to sort of drill down into it massively, but the in column is very small and the out column is very large. Thomas Souček signed from Slavia Prague. We obviously we must have had a backdoor dealing with Slavia Prague.
So your owners must have spent their holidays in Republic.
We've only signed two players. Both of them have come from Slavia Prague. Souček obviously was a loan deal made permanent. He's been a very good signing. And Vladimir Kufal, who apparently was a recommendation of Souček's, has come in for 5 million. And despite him being a complete unknown, he did look very good in his first game of the weekend. So at the moment, with the information we have, it looks like a good buy for a very nominal fee. And then if we look at the out list, Albion Ajeti to Celtic, not really ever given a chance. Jeremy Ngakia, who looked like a good young player, decided that the grass was greener, go on to bigger and better things, and decided in the end to go to Watford in the Championship. Grady Diangana, as we've spoken about, Josh Cullen, another young player, Xande Silva, another young player. We now add Felipe Anderson to that list. He's now gone on loan to Porto. And Jack Wilshere, contract terminated by mutual consent. And before we go on to the other stuff surrounding West Ham, I just wanted to pick up on Wilshere. Did you see the comments that he made after he was released? So for those that didn't, he sort of came out swinging a bit, didn't he? I mean, he didn't go as far to really sort of have a go at West Ham, but it was definitely a dig. So he had said that he'd been frozen out of the team and wasn't given the chance, that he's been working really hard. He said he'd been fit for the best part of the last 8 months, but just hasn't been able to play and not been picked. I'm going to call bullshit on that, though.
Yeah, because I think he is a really good player, so I can't imagine that if he was fully fit and ready to play, he wouldn't be in that team.
No. And he's had like 4 operations.
Yeah.
And he's only been with West Ham 2 years. So, yeah, I'm not sure that he's been fully fit for the last 8 months.
No.
I suspect that he's saying all those things to try and get himself another club.
Yeah.
To tell everyone else, I'm still here. I can still play, almost like I know in Hargreaves. Remember when he did all those YouTube videos? Yeah. So that's what it says to me. I do hope he finds another club, because if he can keep fit, I do think he has something to offer.
Do you think it'll be a Premier League club? Or abroad, or Championship?
I really don't. You know what's the stupid? I saw a comment actually. Someone said, "Do you know what the stupid thing is? Is that I can actually, the most likely destination for someone like Jack Wilshere and his record is West Ham." I did also see today there was a rumour flying around that Arteta was considering bringing Wilshere back. I'd be very, very surprised if that happened.
Yeah, I could see him going to like a Sheffield United or something, to be honest.
But he did go to Bournemouth for a little while. It didn't really work there, and he played a reasonable number of games for them as well.
Yeah, I think wherever he goes, he'd have to sign the whole like pay-as-you-play type thing. I don't think any team is going to take him on a weekly basis. Yeah,
it is a shame, because I do think he's got something to offer. He's still only 28. It's easy to forget how young he still is. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know whether he's got another big Premier League club in him, or whether he's going to have to accept a lower Premier League club, or even maybe abroad would be his best chance. Dare I say America? Is he at that point in his career yet?
Yeah, I don't know.
Who knows?
Maybe Germany, they like to bring through young English players.
Yeah, maybe so. And then just getting on to sort of some of the failings that West Ham did. Obviously, there was no secret behind the amount of centre-backs that we went in for. So Tarkowski decided, or Burnley decided they didn't want to sell for anything less than about 50 million. West Ham obviously didn't feel that was a fair valuation, which on any other day in any other club, you can say, do you know what, fair enough, if you don't think he's worth it, don't pay it. But the problem is that we were then bidding 35 odd million for other people, and it started to reek of desperation. Fofana turned us down to go to Leicester. There was a Marseille centre back, I can't remember what his name is, but he turned us down. And then the icing on the cake was Tomori at Chelsea, who kind of out of nowhere, really, he was one of the few defenders left in the world that we hadn't been linked with. Everything was agreed. between the two clubs, and Tomori at the last minute decided that he wanted to stay and fight for his place at Chelsea, I think 10 minutes before the end of the deadline. And then we start to get... I fucking hate talking about West Ham like this. And then we start to get some of the information that come out about the supposed deal. So originally the story was that we had agreed to pay a massive agent fee, which turned out to be false, which I'm glad about. Then the rumour or the news started to come out that we apparently had agreed to pay 50k to Chelsea every time we didn't play him. I've never heard of a deal involving such a clause. That's incredible, isn't it? 50k every time he does. I mean, it's not, in today's world, it's not a big amount of money, but why would you even have a clause in like that? Is that Chelsea basically saying, if he's going to go to you, he better fucking play?
Yeah. That shows a lot of desperation on West Ham's side, though, doesn't it?
They would agree to it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, so the kind of overarching bigger picture here is that West Ham now have 20 senior players in the squad, 3 of which are goalkeepers. So that means we've got 17 outfield players. The squad is the lowest in the Premier League now in terms of senior players. We have obviously still got a few youngsters we can fill in, but you're asking for trouble if they're your backups.
Yeah.
Which makes, I don't disagree with Felipe Anderson going out on loan because he's not performed in the last 12 months at all. But when you have such a small squad, it's a strange decision to let a player like that go out, because at the very least he's a decent backup now.
Yeah, especially if, I could understand maybe a permanent transfer, but to just send him out on loan seems quite a weird one to not be getting much money for him.
So it's a worrying situation for West Ham at the moment. The fans are going to be furious. The only thing that saves West Ham right now is that the Championship window is still open. We obviously have a success story in Jared Bowen from Hull. Rumour is that we have numerous targets lined up in the Championship, which will be outlined in the coming days. One of which is Saïd Benrahma, which will be a good signing, but his wage demands are apparently very high, which might put us off. The other one was slightly less exciting, is Craig Dawson from Watford. Supposedly, it's going to cost us $4 million to get him.
How old's he? Must be in his late
I don't know. It's going to cost us $4 million. I can see West Ham going in with $2.5 million. So yeah, West Ham have got some work to do. If they need to sign some players, they need to buff out this squad. They can't rely on the youngsters to fill in. To me, things are going really well on the pitch at the moment in the league. But I do feel that if we got an injury to Antonio, or even maybe Jared Bowen, Declan Rice, Thomas Souček, these are such key players. And all right, there are other teams in the league where if you suffered a big injury to a key player, it would hurt them as well. But West Ham, we literally have nobody to bring in.
Yeah.
There's no backup to those players.
Yeah.
There is, but none of them that you would rely on to at least fill the void until they came back.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting week or two for West Ham until this other window closes. They need to do some business. I think that's the long and short of it. So, but overall, a very poor window.
Yeah, I agree. So, lastly, moving on to Portugal. So they've brought in Nelson Semedo from Barcelona, who is Portuguese. They've brought in Fabio Silva from FC Porto, who is also Portuguese. And they've brought in a couple of others, Fernando Marcao and Victor Ferreira, who I'm assuming are also Portuguese. So how do you think they've done?
I think we've spoken about the Joe Hart transfer to Spurs, haven't we, about this English quota. Where are Wolves' English players? I mean, apart from Connor Cody, where are the rest of them?
I don't know. I don't know if Wolves are trying to get a move over to the Portuguese league, so they've got to fill up that quota.
It's been like one of those NFL teams that suddenly moves state in America. It is quite amazing. Wolves have not had the best of starts of the season. They obviously lost a couple of their bigger players from last year in Doherty and Diego Jota. Keeping Raul Jimenez is a big plus. He's obviously been linked with the move away. Traore is still there as well. So I think they've bought well. Fabio Silva, I think, will take time to bed in. But the glimpses we've seen from him, he looks pretty good. Nelson Semedo was one of those players at Barcelona that was touted as having a big future there.
Yeah.
Obviously not worked out, so he's now got to rebuild and start again
I think
effectively.
Wolves have done very well to get him, to be honest.
Yeah, I do.
He could have probably gone to a number of clubs.
So I think Wolves can be pretty happy with their transfer dealings.
Yeah.
I think also, even though again he was never really linked away, I actually think managerially, I think Nuno's done such a good job with Wolves. I am surprised he hasn't been linked with a bigger move yet.
Yeah.
He's had a couple of very good seasons at Wolves. It's easy to forget that Wolves only came out in the Premier League, two seasons ago?
Yeah.
And it almost feels like they're such a mainstay in the league now that you think they've been there for like a decade. But actually, that's testament to not only how well they've bought and done in the transfer market, but how well Nuno has done it at the helm. So I am sort of surprised that he's not been linked with another bigger job.
Do you think they've reached their peak?
I've heard that question flouted around a few times. I don't know. I mean, last season was obviously very, very good for them. It started off dreadfully as well.
Yeah.
To finish 7th after the start they had, get to the quarterfinals of the Europa League. It's often said that if you have a Europa League campaign with one of the lesser clubs, outside of the usual top 6, that it's always a hindrance more than it is a positive because of the squad depth that you need. Wolves don't have that this year. They don't have that distraction. So it will be on them to sort of reflect that and go again and push for Europe. I think Wolves have to aim for Europe this year.
Yeah.
With the squad they have. It's going to be tough though. There's a lot of teams now that are looking like, you look at your top 6, or you would expect them all to be somewhere in the top 6 or 7.
Plus you've got your Evertons, your Leicester.
Yeah.
It's almost like a top 8 now rather than a top 6.
Yeah, I would also. Yeah, I would agree.
Positions available.
Yeah, I would agree that you used to have that top 4 that would break away. I mean, time will tell based on the last few results, but you would expect the top 2 to break away.
Yeah.
If it's anything like last season, the top 4 or the other top 2 in that top 4, we don't really know who that's going to be. That's a bit of a lottery. But again, as you say, you expect it will be the same clubs. It's just a case of which order they're in. And then you've got your Everton, your Leicester, your Wolves. So are we actually now seeing that divide now almost being a top half and bottom half divide now?
Yeah.
So,
which is good. It's a lot more competition and it's not as predictable.
No, I think also even though we are seeing that divide potentially happening, it's not like we're saying that those bottom half of the clubs stand no chance against any of the top clubs, as we've seen. Teams like Villa can turn on a performance like they did against Liverpool. Leeds have taken both City and Liverpool all the way. So I really do think this season, if we don't start getting fans back in soonish, this is going to be a nuts, crazy season.
Yeah.
So, but no, Wolves can be happy. I think they'll be.
I think they've had a good window. They just need to start performing on the pitch now, really, to match their signings.
Yeah. I should apologise to our listeners very briefly. I may have taken the break a little early. I wasn't quite expecting the second half of the show to take, an hour. But just to wrap up, we've done all the teams now, so let's just quickly wrap up what our feelings are. So if I had to say to you, who's had the best window, who would you say?
I believe Chelsea in terms of signings.
Okay.
As well as that, I also believe Everton in terms of signings and how they're sort of performing.
Yeah. I actually think Arsenal. I really do think Arsenal have had a fantastic window. I really like Arteta. I think he's showing signs of really building something there. And I feel like they have identified areas that they need to improve on. I think is it Gabriel? Gabriel, yeah, he's come in and looked good. So I think Arsenal are right up there. And then flip side, worst.
I kind of want to say United first. Well, I could say Burnley as well because they haven't really brought in anyone.
I think
Brighton.
The problem is with Man United and with West Ham is that we've both made signings. You'd argue that West Ham didn't. We definitely needed a right back, and we seem to have bought a decent one. Souček is a great signing. But it's the narrative surrounding both clubs and the other stuff that's gone with that makes you think they've had a really bad window. Whereas if you take it, on transfers alone, I think there are probably teams like Burnley who've had worse windows.
You'd have to have it, for me. It'd probably be like Burnley and Brighton, who probably haven't strengthened as much as they could.
Yeah, or needed to.
Yeah, as much as I'm annoyed about United, I'm sure like Burnley and Brighton would love to have half those players.
Yeah, and I suppose it depends on how you view success and failure.
Mm.
If Manchester United fail, if things really don't work out, then you would imagine what will happen is Solskjaer will get sacked, a decent top manager comes in, and they maybe finish 6th, maybe 7th at absolute worst. If Brighton fail, they get relegated.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the difference between the two. So, yeah, I think it's easy to say West Ham and United, but I think probably if you look at it on a slightly bigger scale or maybe even on a smaller scale, just look at the transfers only, I think probably Brighton and Burnley for me are the two ones that have missed out.
Before we head off, I think it's worth an honourable mention to Choupo-Moting's agent.
Oh, what a man. Get this man a knighthood.
From Stoke to PSG to Bayern Munich.
What have Bayern Munich seen in him?
God knows.
To think that he improves their squad.
God knows.
Absolutely incredible. We haven't really had time to talk. There have been some other fantastic stories that have floated around during this window. I mean, nothing of the level of sort of Odin Wingy back in the day, where he's rocking up at QPR to try and force the move through. Yeah. I don't think anything will ever beat that, but there have been some great ones. Apologies that we took the break at slightly the wrong time. So we've had a very long second half of the show. It has been a long show. We appreciate you sticking with us and listening all through our gibberish and talking about what we think. But I guess it's over to you guys now. What do you think? Tell us who you think's had the best window, who's had the worst window. You can let us know on social media. You can comment on one of our statuses. You can just send us a message, or you could email us at show@thekickabout.co.uk. And we will be back for our normal show on Monday, when we get to talk about England for the first time. Which...
don't know if I'm looking forward to it.
So, appreciate everyone sticking with us. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next week.